welcome back to the Dear Herbalist podcast. My name is Justaria Curry. If you are new here, you're most certainly welcome. And if you are a returning listener, thank you as always for your continued support. I absolutely appreciate it. So for the month of December, we are going to be talking about systems and clients, the hidden layers of herbal practice. This will be episode number 2 of this 5-part series, and it's called Systems Behind the Symptoms. As herbalists, we are trained to listen closely to the body, to the pulse, to the patterns, to what our clients say, and what's only whispered between those lines. But symptoms don't just float in a vacuum. They're shaped by the world our clients live in. Stress, food access, caregiving roles, cultural beliefs, work demands, trauma, climate, community support, or lack thereof. And all of these become a part of the terrain. And if I sound a little nasally, y'all forgive me. I've been in and out, running. You know, mom life. So yeah, I'm doing a little draining today, but I said I'm not going to let that stop me from doing this podcast. I don't care how I sound. As long as I'm clear enough and you can hear me, then that's what we're going to do. This is real life out here. Okay. So if I do sound a little nasally, please forgive me. But pay attention to the information because I promise it's going to bless your life. So when I talk about systems, I'm talking about the interconnected social, cultural, economic, and institutional forces that shape a client's daily reality, as well as their health options. And this goes beyond their individual choices. It includes things like food access, employment, stress loads, racism, medical trauma, transportation, family roles, and local healthcare structures that all interact together to influence how symptoms show up and how care is accessed. When herbalists work at the systems behind the symptoms level, we are reading these wider patterns and designing care that addresses both the individual body and the surrounding conditions, not just the immediate complaint. So tonight we're going to explore how the social, cultural, and systemic forces in a person's life shape what we see in our businesses, in our groups, and how we as herbalists can respond more holistically. So let's start by looking at why symptoms are not just symptoms. Okay, let me say that again. Why symptoms are not just symptoms. One of the first major things to understand, especially in herbal medicine, is that a symptom is not something that, just came out of nowhere and your body is just not working correctly. That is not a symptom. It's a message from a system that is under strain. And I always like to use the check engine light on your car analogy because people are able to understand it better. So when you look at the check engine light on in your car, it's there to alert you that something in the system of the car is either not working properly, it's out of whack, it's defective, something is wrong. And so that light will come on to alert you, the driver, that there's something wrong with your car. Same thing with the body. When a symptom arises, i.e. drainage or, headaches and these type of things, it's a message from the systems of your body saying that it is either under strain, there's a toxin, there's an imbalance, something is going on, right? But when you're looking at it from a systems perspective, the system might not be the body. So you may have a client that comes in with fatigue or digestive upset, poor sleep. They also have anxiety. And this is a pretty classic presentation with our clients. Now, we could talk all day about adrenal tonics, bitters, nervines. We could talk about sleep hygiene. But one of the things you have to consider is, what if this person is caring for 3 children while working full time? What if they live in a neighborhood with limited access to food? What if they're dealing with an unsafe landlord situation or navigating racialized medical trauma? Or what if they're in constant low-grade fear about financial stability? And anybody that's living this life right now in this economy right now hopefully can understand that. But as herbalists, if we only address the physiology, right, the poor sleep, digestive upset, anxiety, we start trimming the branches instead of tending to the roots. Symptoms are expressions of lived experience, and many of those experiences are shaped by systems, not just personal choices. So, herbalism becomes more powerful, more ethical, and more grounded when we widen our view when it comes to our clients' health. Let's talk about some of the systems that affect our clients' clinical presentations or how they appear to us, often in ways we don't see until we're asking the right questions. So, these are some of the invisible systems that shape the body. Number one, and again, if you have your notebook, pen, paper, back of a receipt, note taking time. But number one, chronic stress and modern life pressure. Now, this is a big one because stress is not just I feel overwhelmed. It is a physiological force. And so it dysregulates the digestion, it disrupts cortisol rhythms, it destabilizes sleep cycles, it contributes to inflammatory conditions, and it impacts our immune response. But why is someone stressed? Is the question that you have to ask. And it's rarely because they forgot to meditate. Okay? Stress often comes from unstable work hours, caring for aging parents, community violence, discrimination, housing instability, school debt, climate anxiety, social isolation. These are not lifestyle choices, but they're structural realities. When we treat stress-related symptoms without acknowledging structure, then we're missing the deeper story. Number two, food access and nutritional inequity. And we all know that nutrition influences health, but clients don't just choose their food in a vacuum. You know, if somebody lives in a food desert, a neighborhood with high food prices, a place with limited public transportation, or a community without culturally familiar foods, this will shape this will shape inflammation patterns, blood sugar stability, iron levels, digestive health, energy, mental clarity. And so as herbalists, we often ask, well, what do you eat? What type of foods do you eat? But maybe we should be asking them, what foods are available and affordable to you? What foods feel culturally grounding for you? These are some of the questions we should ask and shift how we ask those questions. Number three, healthcare inequities and medical trauma. Many clients come to herbalism because they've been dismissed or harmed in mainstream healthcare settings. And this affects trust, follow through, willingness to disclose symptoms, understanding of their own body, and emotional safety in your herbalism session. Because someone who feels unheard, they may downplay their symptoms. Or someone who's been shamed for their weight, they may avoid talking about digestion. Or if they've experienced racial bias, they may be hesitant to express that they have pain in their body. Or if they're neurodivergent, they may have a long history of being misunderstood. When we know these patterns exist, we hold space with more compassion and less assumption. All right? When we know these patterns exist, when we identify these patterns, we have to hold space with more compassion and less assumption. Number four, cultural beliefs about health. Now, as we all know, culture shapes how people understand illness. So some cultures, they avoid discussing mental health. They rely heavily on food-based remedies. They emphasize familial decision-making, meaning the family comes together to make decisions together. They interpret symptoms spiritually or symbolically, or they have specific postpartum care traditions. So instead of trying to correct these frameworks, we can integrate them. Herbalism has always been cultural, and we cannot ever forget that. It's not, nor has it ever been, a one-size-fits-all field. All right? There is no one-size-fits-all. Number five, and the last one, work and labor conditions. A client's job radically shapes their physiology, what type of job they have. So let's say they're working night shifts. Well, this can disrupt their circadian rhythm. If they have a job where they are sitting most of the time, this type of work can slow down the digestion as well as circulation. Or if they have a service job, this can elevate stress and cortisol. If they work in a factory, this introduces chemical exposures. If they're doing gig work, part-time work, these type of things, they may live in financial uncertainty. Or if they're caregivers, they may experience chronic burnout. So when we understand a client's labor environment, we should be tailoring the herbs and the recommendations to match their real life, not an idealized one. So really quickly, let's go over a few case stories where we can look at the system and not just the body. And these are fictionalized, okay, but they are realistic to illustrate the difference between symptom-focused and system-aware practice. So we're going to start out with Maria. Maria. We're going to start out with Maria and the mystery fatigue. Now, Maria is 42 years old. She presents with constant fatigues, headaches, and brain fog. Now, if we stop right here, we might think, oh, okay, I got it. She has adrenal depletion or she's anemic, right? But when we ask Maria more broader questions, we discover that she works 2 jobs. She sleeps about 5.5 hours a night. She shares a 2-bedroom apartment with 6 family members. She has limited access to fresh food. She hasn't had health care coverage in 8 years. So instead of just running to our medicine cabinet and just saying, you know what, we're just going to start giving adaptogens, we might offer simple tonics that she can take during long shifts. We also could recommend food as medicine options that are aligned with her budget as well as her family culture. 3, we can teach micro rest techniques, and this is for someone who can't take long breaks. And then we can also explore community health resources or sliding scale wellness or naturopath clinic options for her. And through all that, we have to work slowly and gently, knowing that with Maria, we are supporting. Okay, we're helping support her and not fixing a system under strain. All right, so we are supporting her system through what she has to go through. Okay, but we're not necessarily fixing a system under strain. And a lot of people might be asking, well, what's the difference? Well, one of the things is that if her situation doesn't change, she's still working 2 jobs. She still has 5.5 hours of sleep at night. For most people, it's hard for them to do immediate shifts to where it's like, fine, I'll just quit one job and I'll only work one job. I'll start sleeping 8 hours a night. I will, get rid of the 4 family members and just have me and a kid. I'll go out and buy all the fresh, expensive. That's not realistic. And we know that. Okay. That's fixing. We have to meet people where they are and we have to adjust. And during this time, because with this particular client, her situation may not change for weeks, months, or it may take time, even years. So during that process, you want to support what she's currently doing right now. Support the body and support her to start making minor changes. But during that time, rather than just ripping the Band-Aid off or pulling the rug out from up under her feet, we have to support the body so that it can continue to do what it needs to do, even though she is still continuing on with her current lifestyle. All right, now let's look at case 2. Isaac and the digestive spiral. That's what I called it. Isaac reports, he comes into your office and he reports bloating, intermittent diarrhea, and anxiety. Now, when we hear all that, the loose bowels and all that, we want to run straight for bitters, nervines, and gut repair herbs. But as we're asking him more questions and listening, we find out that he's the primary caregiver for his mother who has dementia. We find out that he eats quickly, often while standing, because he's on the go. He is internally terrified of failing her. He has no personal time and he has very, very little support. So his symptoms are expressions of caregiver burnout. So our herbal approach has to match that. So you want to look at moistening nervines. We give him gut calming demulcent. We look at herbs that support emotional resilience. Okay. We give him strategies for small pockets of nervous system regulation and referrals to caregiver support organizations as well, so that he can have that support from people who can, who are dealing with an adult parent that has dementia. They may be at various stages, and he may be at the beginning, and somebody else may be further down, and they can offer some more support. So that's important as well. And let's look at Aisha, case number 3. All right, the pain that nobody believed. Now, Aisha comes in with chronic pelvic pain, insomnia, and muscle tension. And she said that she has been to 3 doctors already, and each one told her it's probably stress, and you're young, you'll be fine, and everyone has cramps. And so because of that, because they've minimized her pain, she has learned to underreport it. So we work with her to build trust. And during that time, she reveals a long history of medical dismissal tied to racism and sexism. And when you hear racism, like, well, what does that mean? What that means is typically African American women, and historically African American women, were said to have a very high pain tolerance. Okay. And we all know, especially those of us who are African American, Black American, Hebrew women, we know that that is not true. But historically, we have been tied to having higher pain thresholds. And because of that, when we go into the medical community, they're always like, oh, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's probably just this, And because of that, all right, you learn to underreport your pain. And so with Aisha, her body is holding both physical pain as well as emotional trauma. So herbal care for her might include antispasmodics, nervines, trauma-informed support, resourcing her with culturally relevant healing practices, okay? And listening. This is where herbal medicine shines. I tell people all the time, it is not alternative medicine, but it is embodied care, because we look at the entire person. How can we as herbalists respond holistically? How do we practice with symptoms awareness without becoming social workers, therapists, or public policy experts? How do we do that? Well, my background is in social work, so that brain never turns off. But licensed therapists and that type of stuff, if that is not your scope as an herbalist, and you don't have, certification as a therapist or license, you don't want to dive into that realm. But there's nothing wrong with listening to people and hearing their issues and problems. That you're going to hear it anyway, right? You're going to hear it anyway. Now, when it comes to social work, like I said, social work is my background, as well as herbal medicine. And what social work teaches you is to understand the systems surrounding the issues that a person may be dealing with, right? But it also talks about community resources and being able to connect people with community resources to be able to help them out. And so how that looks for herbalists is that, let's say you have a client who is food insecure and they just lost their job. Well, you can connect them with a social worker to be able to help them get food stamps or get some kind of food support. And in social work, we call these things wraparound services. So we provide several different organizations that could provide support to the client, thus helping them, stabilize their situation, and then helping them better their health, and really trying to do all that at the same time if possible. Let me give you 5 practical strategies that you can use to respond holistically to these variety of systems that our clients deal with. All right, let me see how good I'm on time. Okay, good. Number 1, ask questions that reveal context. So instead of only asking, what brings you in today, or what symptoms are you experiencing? You can ask those things, but try adding questions like, what does a typical day look like for you? Or how does your work environment feel on your body? Or what foods feel accessible and nourishing for you right now? Most people know. They'll tell you, like, oh, I drank milk and my stomach is like, no. You can also ask them, what makes it easier or harder for you to care for yourself? And then, are there community or cultural supports that feel important in your healing process? These questions invite the whole person into the conversation. Because trust me, most people are used to the standard hospital doctor questions. They're used to checklists and all of that. So in their mind, they're used to just talking about symptoms alone. That's it. So that's how they come to you. Not realizing that herbalists, we don't just look at that. That is important. We look at the symptoms and what the body's trying to communicate, but that is not all we take into consideration. And that's why a lot of people's consultations are about an hour or two for the first one. Because you're asking more in-depth questions. You're trying to recognize patterns. All right, number 2, tailor recommendations to their real life. One of the biggest mistakes that I notice that herbalists make is that they're giving protocols that are too long, too expensive, or too complicated. And I will say this, I'm a big proponent of what do you have growing around you? What is local to where you are? I know on TikTok and Instagram, YouTube, there's all these latest berries and juices and herbs from 5 million countries away from here in the United States, and it's the magic this and the that, and at the end of the day, if people don't have access to it, or they can get it but it's so expensive, is that really in their best interest? Because if you look at herbalism from 5,000 years ago, and even if you want to go just even back 500 years ago, okay, they weren't getting, if you lived in North Carolina, you're not trying to find herbs from China. And if you lived in China, you're not reaching out to India to try to get herbs, right? Now, when people started settling and traveling and moving from place to place, they brought their herbs with them. But for the most part, people got them from right where they are. So if you are an herbalist, I don't care where you live, in whatever city, state, find the herbs that are growing in your area. That way, you can teach your clients, or you too can make inexpensive. That's what makes it inexpensive. Inexpensive herbal remedies so that you can provide them to your client. Or you can show your client how to do it. They can find it and make it for themselves. But it's still not expensive. If you want to try to, get rich in herbal medicine or, make the big bucks, then sell your intellectual property. But or products you create. But for the most part, day-to-day client relationships and dealing with clients, and let's say they don't have that much money, there are sometimes you're just going to have to give it away for free. Oh no. But with clients, you don't want to give a protocol that's too long. Take them too long to figure it out. Too expensive. They got to spend too much money and they already don't have it. Or too complicated. Okay? If there's 45,000 steps, they're not going to be in compliance with it. You can just almost bet money on it, if you do that. Holistic care is not about giving more herbs. It's about giving herbs that fit your client's budget, their time capacity, their cultural familiarity, nervous system, and daily rhythm. All right? So if you have a client that comes in, I'll use myself as an example as an African-American woman, and you have a client that comes in and they're dealing with a lot of stomach issues and digestive issues. In my community, we understand a lot about ginger. Our grandparents use it, grandfathers, grandmothers, uncles, aunties. We love some ginger ale, even though it's not that the kind is made, it's not necessarily healthy, but we love ginger and we understand it, right? And some people, they don't know all the ins and outs and the science behind it, but they know it settles their stomach. That's where they go with it, right? So, cultural familiarity, that's what that means. Okay? You also want to make sure it fits the client's nervous system as well as their daily rhythm. So maybe your client doesn't need 4 tinctures, or, maybe they just need 1 tea that they can drink before bed. Or maybe they don't need a full diet overhaul. Maybe they just need to switch out 3 simple foods that they might be eating with something else. Okay? Number 3, build trust through non-judgment. Now, clients often carry shame around their weight or the type of foods they eat, the stress they have, or their medical history. So, as herbalists, we can respond with curiosity, not judgment, compassion, not correction, and partnership, not authority. We meet people where they are, okay, not where we think they should be. We got to leave what we think, as far as that's concerned, out of it. Number 4, use herbs to support systemic resilience. Herbs shine when working with chronic systemic stress. So, for example, nervines help regulate emotional and physiological stress. Adaptogens support stability in unstable environments. Demulcents soothe bodies impacted by fast, irregular eating. Digestive bitters support sluggish digestion influenced by sedentary work, meaning they're not up around all the time. Carminatives help tension pattern digestion from either anxiety or fear. And reproductive tonics help support cycles disrupted by systemic trauma. So we're not treating stress, we're supporting a nervous system shaped by the context that we get from our clients. Number 5, know your scope and build your network. Because holistic doesn't mean that you do everything. You can often refer clients to community health clinics, social services, nutrition programs, behavioral health specialists, culturally specific faith-based organizations, mutual aid networks, caregiver support groups, and referrals are not a failure. They're a part of ethical practice. So you know that within your scope you can only do this, so you need to refer on for other parts of your relationship with your client. And what does this mean? What does all of what I said tonight mean as a whole for herbalists? As herbalists, we are a part of the healthcare landscape, but we're also a part of the community landscape. When we acknowledge the systems that shape health, we build safer spaces, we avoid victim blaming, we deepen our empathy, we design more effective herbal strategies, we create culturally relevant practices, and we honor the lived experiences of our clients. This is not political, it's human. And herbalism is at its best when it's relational, when it sees people as whole beings living in complex worlds. And when we practice like this, herbs become more than just medicine. They become bridges between the symptom and its story, between the client and their own resilience, between the body and the community that it belongs to. So, if you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on all of my social media sites at The Demystified Herbalist. Go over to my website at www.thedemystifiedherbalist.com to learn more. There's tons of remedies over there. For the holidays, go ahead and shop. Get your herbal stuff for the holidays. Give the gift of wellness this year. And remember, stay safe out there. All right? Stay warm. Enjoy. And until next time, family, I'm out.